While I'm taxiing out today, I'm thinking about two types of landings. I've flown with other pilots and I've watched their choices. You can think of landings as beginning way back on the downwind leg, turning base and setting up on final. But for today, I only want to talk about the few seconds before touchdown. So let's start our discussion at the point where you cross the threshold. Now, any tailwheel pilot will tell you there's two types of landings, and there's times when you'd prefer one type over the other. Maybe you most often want to do a wheel or a two-point landing, planting the main gear firmly down and then gently setting the tail. But if wind conditions dictate, maybe it's better to do a three-point landing and get that tail wheel on the ground sooner. In a tricycle gear plane, you never ever want to do a three-point landing. You always want to come in so the main gear touches first. Now, that having been said, I've flown with pilots whose landings in tricycle gear planes fall into one of two similar types, and I'll demonstrate that today.
Nine Alpha Mike, turning left base, runway 16, long landing, full stop, Pickens.
Take Travis Scout 9672 Romeo, lift downwind 16, Pickens.
I'm going to be sharing the pattern today with two Skyhawks doing touch and goes. In this first example, I'm going to be landing in a very flat attitude, and I've seen pilots do this.
Pickens County, Skyhawk 918 Hotel, left base for 16, full stop, Pickens County.
Because of radio traffic, you probably didn't hear the point where the wheels touched the runway. At that point, though, we were still doing 60 knots, and that's a good 13 knots over stall speed. The wings were still carrying the weight of the plane. Now, since I don't have spoilers, in gusty winds, that's really not a safe landing practice. Let's do that one again, and this time notice that the nose doesn't rise much during the landing flare. In fact, there's hardly a flare at all. Now at the other end of the spectrum is the full stall landing. Here, you slow the plane down to stall speed, ideally just a few inches above the runway, and you let it drop down when the stall occurs. You've killed the lift, and the plane stops flying. Now I can still remember my first flight instructor telling me to hold it off until the stall. That's how I was taught to land. And of course, now in this video, some radio transmissions happen at the point where you begin to hear the stall warning horn. Yeah, wouldn't you know?
Pickens traffic, Skyhawk 9067 Juliet Romeo is on left crosswind, landing runway 16, Pickens traffic.
Now, I don't especially like doing full stall landings for two reasons. I think it makes passengers uneasy when they hear the stall warning horn, and I think it stresses the landing gear more than necessary. Sometimes, though, in gusty conditions or with a wet runway, it's the safest landing to do. You can see here that on this landing, we settled in at 50 knots indicated. So let's do one more full stall landing. Of course, at the critical point where I wanted you to hear the stall warning horn go off, somebody made a radio call. Videos are so hard to do.
Pickens County area traffic, Sarasota Tango lining up and waiting to depart on 16, waiting for that aircraft to clear the runway.
Airspeed indicator right at the bottom of the white arc. So this is the type of landing I usually shoot for. It's a margin above the stall that guarantees a nose-high attitude with touchdown just before the stall warning horn would sound. And if I do it right without floating, I think passengers are more at ease with it. Touchdown on this landing at 54 knots indicated. I don't especially like sharing the pattern with Skyhawks. They fly long and wide patterns. Notice on this approach, I turn from base to final and I'm right at the runway, not 2 miles away. That's how I do it if I'm solo in the pattern. I think it's some kind of a cosmic rule that at the very point when I'm going to touch down, somebody has to make a broadcast.
Travis Skyhawk 967 Juliet Romeo left downwind 16 seconds.
Here's the last one of a landing that is kind of the type that I prefer, although I do kind of feel like I floated it a little bit.
Travis Skyhawk 967 Juliet Romeo left downwind 16 seconds.
And so to summarize, some pilots make flat landings, basically flying the plane to the ground. Sometimes those are the easiest to do, but not necessarily good for the plane since landing speeds are higher. Other pilots may stall the plane onto the ground, probably best from an aerodynamic point of view. But me, I shoot for the middle ground. I come in with a landing 5 to 10 knots above stall and with a pronounced nose-high attitude. That's my story and I'm sticking with it. Do you like my stuff? Subscribe and give us a thumbs up. Then stay tuned for the next episode coming around shortly. See ya.